Hi everyone! As you can probably tell, I'm trying out a kind of different type of intro setup this month where you can actually see my face. And the only reason I decided to do this, or maybe not the only, but the main reason I decided to do this was to share what happened to my bullet journal. The other day I took it out to sketch in my October spreads and the elastic snapped off of the back, so it no longer closes with an elastic closure. And in my typical intro video, I kind of undo the elastic and open up the planner. And I knew I wanted to show this to you guys, but thought it would be better to show you face-to-face virtually. So instead I decided to do this type of intro, and who knows, maybe I'll stick to this type from now on. This month I'm setting up October in my bullet journal. I'm still using this one. I have to figure out what I'm gonna do about the elastic. I will either take it off completely or maybe try to glue it back onto the back, but we'll see. So this month, Mousey Mouse and Toby the Turtle are in a fall, spooky Halloween theme across the whole month. So I'm gonna kick it on over to the voiceover, and I hope you enjoyed this setup. So I tried to explain a little bit about the theme already, and basically it's just Mousey Mouse and Toby doing whatever it is that I can think of to have them do in the month of October. So for the cover page, that is starting off with the two of them trick-or-treating. So I doodled them in their different costumes, and Mousey Mouse is dressed up like a wizard, and Toby the Turtle is dressed up like a ghost. They are both carrying their pails to collect their candy in. And I doodled them standing in front of this wooden door in a stone archway. From the stories that my dad told me about Mousey Mouse and Toby the Turtle, he included so many different characters that they met on their very many adventures. Most of them were very friendly, and one of them was not so friendly. And I decided October would be a good month to include the, I don't want to say villain, but I guess villain or not so friendly character of Kitty Cat. And Kitty Cat's mission throughout all of the stories was pretty much to catch Mousey Mouse and eat her. So, I mean, I guess that does kind of classify as a villain. So I drew Kitty Cat hiding behind the bushes on the first spread, spying on Mousey Mouse and Toby the Turtle. Don't worry, Kitty Cat never actually caught Mousey Mouse throughout the very many stories my dad told. I would typically include a quote page on the left-hand side, but since this cover page spread ended up being very drawing heavy, I decided not to include a quote for this month. I also really couldn't find many fitting quotes that went with the theme that I also enjoyed. I was finding them all either overdone or they just didn't really resonate with me. So I chose not to do a quote on this page, and I only included a quote on the calendar page, which you'll see when I set that up next. So to finish off my spread, I just colored in all of my drawings with my Arteza colored pencils. Oh, right. Originally, I was just going to keep this bush plain green. I had contemplated doodling in some flowers, but decided against that. And then as I started coloring it in, I realized it was going to just be a brick of green, and I didn't really like that idea. So I went ahead and doodled in some spider webs, and I think they turned out pretty nice. I decided to go for the Dutch door spread style cover page again this month. I did the same thing last month, and I liked it, but wasn't a huge fan because the pages in my bullet journal are pretty thin. I think they probably work better on thicker pages. But I also had fun with it, so I decided to give it a go for another month, and I'm just not sure if it's something that I'll continue to utilize every month. But we'll find out. Next year, I hope to get a thicker paged bullet journal, so maybe it'll work better in whichever one I go for next year. And now I am setting up my calendar overview. I also debated not including this for October. I just find that I don't come back to this spread very often. I fill it in at the beginning of the month, and I typically forget about it. Does anybody else not include a calendar page, or maybe does something a little bit different? I'd love to get ideas or suggestions. I'm all about trying new things, especially when things are not working. I think it is very important to find what works for you, and I have no hesitation not using something if it's not working for me. If you want a doodle that's really difficult to mess up, I highly recommend doodling some spider webs, because during this process I was convinced they were going to turn out horribly. My lines were crooked, my spacing wasn't even, and I was convinced I had really messed up the doodle, but it ended up looking really nice. So I think they're really difficult to mess up, and I think the imperfections even make it look better. So doodle away with the spider webs. And this month I actually remembered to space my monthly title to a spot where it won't be covered up by part of the other cover page. And then for the dates for the monthly spread, I drew circles in black and went on top of them to write the dates in a silver metallic gel pen. They turned out okay. My gel pen isn't a thin tip. Off the top of my head, I think it's a 1. And I typically prefer to write with a 0.5 or less. So my circles just weren't really big enough. But I think it's still nice. And the quote that I chose for this spread is, well, actually, I wrote it backwards, so I'm going to say it the way it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be, if one door closes and another opens, your house is probably haunted. I read that, I thought it was hilarious, and knew I wanted to include it. And I messed it up, and I swapped the words opens and closes. So it says if one door opens and another closes, which still makes sense, it's just backwards. I make a lot of mistakes in this spread. Well, in this setup in general, and in many of my spreads. So, no worries, roll with it, and there's always next month. For this month, I am also switching up which pages I include before my weekly spreads. So last month, I talked about how I don't use habit trackers because they're just not functional for me. They don't work in any sort of helpful way, and I get really upset when I forget to fill them out, so I don't bother with those. And I attempted a sleep tracker, which I discovered really doesn't work for me either. I'm just not good at going back and filling those types of spreads out. And then I get upset that they're not filled out. And so overall, I think they do more harm than good. And there's no point to include a spread like that. But one that I have found helpful in the past is a brain dump page, which I didn't put a title to. There's a YouTuber, Torin Marie, who calls hers mind maps, and I like that wording better, and I didn't want to steal her wording, and I didn't want to write brain dump, so it's just a blank page, and I doodled Mousey Mouse kind of looking up at the page, or really looking up at the moon that I doodled on the page next to it, and she's wearing this leaf crown for fall. And the spread on the right, I am trying things totally different. I haven't tried 2 out of these 3 things before. So the box at the top is an income and savings tracker. I get paid weekly and sometimes extras throughout the month, and I wanted a place to write down any income that I receive throughout the month, and then also split it up into 3 categories. 2 are my major savings categories, and 1 is my general spending. So I set it up in a way that will be functional for me. And then the middle section is for recipe ideas that I want to try out for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks. And the bottom section is the one I did last month, the month in messages, but I did not need a full page. And that's 2 months in a row that I didn't need a full page, so I decided to cut it down and not use up so much space. So I will reflect at the end of this month on how those 2 spreads work for me, and I will evaluate whether to keep them or adjust them or take them out altogether for the next month. And now we have come to the first weekly spread setup for October. It's the same spread that I used for all of last month, just some slight adjustments. But first I'll talk about my doodle. I have Mousey Mouse and Toby the turtle playing in a pile of leaves. Fall has officially started, although I am currently in Florida where it certainly does not feel like it is fall. Normally I'm in New York where we get much more drastic of a change of seasons. And the leaf pile is pretty much a bunch of random designed leaf doodles spread out, and then I colored in the background. So you get the idea that it's a pile of leaves, but I didn't have to try to draw a ton of detail. And I'm using the same vertical setup, so each day has its own vertical column. And I split up each column into 2 sections. And you can see my first major adjustment was that I have all of the boxes touching this month instead of having a space in between. And the second adjustment that I made is making the top box significantly longer. I use the top box of each column to write out my weekly schedule, and then I use the bottom box to write my to-dos and various tasks for that day. And I decided that I wanted to use my scheduling box in a more hourly setup. So you'll see that I will write all of the hours of the day from 7 to 9 along the left-hand side. And that is where I can write in everything that I have going on that day, whether it's work or an appointment or classes for school. And then I still have a good portion at the bottom where I can write homework assignments and other things that I have to do each day. I made this adjustment in the last couple of weeks of September and really enjoyed it. It works really well for me, so that's what I will continue to do for the rest of October. I have decided not to do a video setting up the remainder of my weekly setups for this month because things with school and with work are pretty hectic and my schedule's a little bit tight, and I don't want to overcommit and then decide to give up on my bullet journal altogether. So I will continue to do the monthly setups on video and the rest of my weekly spreads I will just set up on my own as needed. With that being said, I know that it's just barely October, but I would love some ideas for November themes. So we're continuing on with Mousey Mouse and Toby the Turtle, but they need some sort of theme or adventure to go on for November. So drop that below in the comments so that I can check them all out and pick the one that really resonates or that has the most votes. And that was it for my full October setup. Thank you so much for joining me on this bullet journey. I hope you found some inspiration or at least some entertainment from this video. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. You can check out the other videos that I have posted and get ready for my November setup, which will be coming in 1 month. Maybe I'll post another video at some point, maybe about some school setup or something, but no promises, but definitely for November. And yeah, just thanks so much again. I truly appreciate it. Happy planning.